Hi everybody, welcome to this second video of this self-reg series. In this episode, we are looking at step 2 of self-reg, which is recognizing stresses. I'm Naomi, a speech therapist and founder of Speech Therapy Adventures. I'm passionate about connecting people and helping children learn through play. In this episode, I have written it to go with school-going children in mind. So if you're a parent or a teacher, this will be really applicable for the child that you're thinking about. I can't wait for us to start. This is what we'll be covering in this episode today. Firstly, we'll be reviewing the 5 steps of self-reg as well as the 5 domains within self-reg. And then we will dive straight into the nitty-gritties of recognizing the stressors, not forgetting really explaining why it is so important for us to figure out all these stresses. And lastly, we will definitely be practicing how to recognize some of these stresses in an everyday environment in the school setting. This is a quick review. We know that self-reg is a process that comprises of 5 steps. So the first step is read and reframing that behavior. The second step is recognizing the stresses. The third step is reducing the stress. The fourth step is reflecting and enhancing the stress awareness. And the fifth step is responding, so developing personal strategies to help reduce and restore energy. So, in this episode, we are diving deep into the second step. So, recognizing the stresses. So, the ultimate goal for self-reg is for children to be able to acquire the necessary understanding of when and how to manage their own energy and tension. With this, they can then adapt to the ever-changing and increasing stresses of life. But self-reg is also personal. So we want these children to be able to clearly recognize their own stresses so that they can bring their awareness to it and know how to manage their energy and tension as they grow up in time to come. In self-reg, there are 5 domains which we think about to help us identify stresses. So these 5 domains are biological, emotion, social, pro-social, and cognitive. So let's apply these 5 domains within a school setting in a specific scenario, say group project work. So if we are thinking about the biological domain and looking out for stresses, it would be something like, a child lacking sleep or is feeling hungry, having to sit for too long, having to put up with noise from the adjacent kid. These stresses may sometimes push a kid over to be a little bit overwhelmed. In the emotions domain, a child may be feeling a myriad of strong feelings. These may be positive or negative. So positive feelings can be excitement or joy during recess, to negative feelings such as embarrassment or confusion when they are asked to turn in a piece of work that they have forgotten to complete. Socially, the child has to navigate group work and to be able to pick up and understand social cues as well as implicit rules within group work. So these also include having to understand that, having to participate in group work is really different from having to participate within a social setting, and it's quite different from your regular friendship during recess time, and how that dynamic within a group setting might be different from your usual friendship during recess time is something that a child needs to also navigate. So, moving on, pro-socially, the child needs to also understand that other people have their stresses too. This helps them to develop empathy and to know how to encourage his friend who may be feeling down in that process of that group project work. So this same child may also try to finish his work on time so that he doesn't add on to other people's stress. But when he does this, encouraging others and also completing his work on time, these in turn add stress to himself. And so this is classified as pro-social stress. In the cognitive domain, a child may try to learn the content as well as to organize how all these various ideas go together so that the listeners or the audience of this project work can really understand the presentation clearly and concisely. So we wouldn't have thought that there will be so many stresses that's involved in a group project work within a school setting. It is important to realize that each of these domains interact with other domains as well, and they have a multiplying effect. So if a child is really concentrating on organizing the ideas and pinning them down within the group project work, he or she might not be able to readily respond to another social conversation as well, or be able to pick up social cues as well. So this is why we always look for the stresses within the other domains as well. So these five domains are essential for us to go through as we identify each stress. If we have a kid that is struggling within the cognitive domain and we are trying to help him, it might be really helpful for us to explore the other domains to look into the underlying stresses, the hidden stresses that might be within each of the other domains. And together, if we look at the five domains, it will really help us uncover some of these hidden stresses and put us one step forward into helping this child, even though we may think that the problem is solely within the cognitive domain. Now that we have covered the domains to help us think about these stresses, let us dive in to make sure that we are catching them all. So how do we recognize these stresses? To identify hidden stresses, we need to become detectives. We need to look beyond obvious stresses. Hidden stresses trigger deep systemic responses. So being a good stress detective requires that we become a good listener of the limbic brain and develop the ability to read cues and signs that the body is sending. These hidden stresses affect us subconsciously, and it requires the expenditure of energy. This expenditure of energy is something that is not easy for us to see, and it is not easy for our prefrontal cortex to immediately recognize. Some examples might be the hum of the air conditioning within the classroom, the reverberation within the class, the reflection of laminated class notices on the notice boards. As we become better stress detectives, it gets easier to identify them. To make things even more complex, stressors are different for everyone. What is a stressor for one person can be relaxing for another person, and vice versa. So, all human beings react differently to the same stimuli. Our reasoning bias can lead to mistakes in our appreciation for other people's behavior. Lastly, positive stress can turn into negative stress and vice versa. Stress can be positive or negative. Positive stress, such as learning, concentration, being with other children, can lead to long term growth and well being. It is not black and white, it's our viewpoint that matters. So, recognizing the stresses can be complicated and challenging, but I hope I've impressed upon the importance of recognizing the stresses. Recognizing the stresses can be complicated and challenging, but I hope I've impressed upon the importance of recognizing these stresses. These stresses are so worthwhile if you manage to find them. Why? As mentioned before, hidden stresses affects us subconsciously. As stress requires the expenditure of energy. So this expenditure of energy is something that is not easy to see. And it is not something that your prefrontal cortex can recognize it immediately. And this expenditure of energy affects our brain body connection, our ability to function at our best, and we ourselves need to recover from this experience so that we are ready to have the energy that we need to face the other challenges that may be ahead of us. With that being said, it's time for us to practice to recognize some of these stresses. Remember, we are not only looking at obvious stresses, we are also looking for hidden ones. Dun, 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 dun. We are also making it personal. So remember the fact that what is a stressor for one person can be relaxing for another, and the other way around. So we need to make sure that the stressor that we have identified is applicable to the individual that you are thinking about. So what are the stressors in schools today? So if you're thinking about the biological domain, there are overt stressors, and these overt stressors include noise, visual clutter, bright lights within the classes that we see today. How about the hidden ones? These hidden ones include reverberation, classroom reflection of notices on the wall, and if your child has asthma or allergies, their bodies are constantly expending the energy within their immune system so that your child is still functioning their best within the classroom setting. How about the emotions domain? Overt stresses include, the constant worrying whether or not they would finish their homework on time, and the feeling of being maybe not as welcomed by other children in their classroom setting. And for hidden stresses, these include, anxiety that is triggered by the school bell. And for school-going children, the need to belong to a group is strong, and they are stressed when they sense that they are different from their peers. How about the cognitive domain? The overt stresses within the academic settings would definitely include preparing for a test or producing a longer piece of work, such as a narrative or an essay. And how about the hidden stresses? These hidden stresses are more assumed within the academic realm. So these include comprehension, having comprehension difficulties, having difficulties following complex instruction or following the content that is taught within classroom. And some children may have visual perception differences, and they have difficulties recognizing alphabets, and these can lead to poorer reading skills, and attentional differences can also play a part. When I say attentional differences, I mean to say that when a person is best. So schools are typically in the morning, but not everybody is their best in the morning. So we might be able to see some attentional differences in a child in the morning versus in the afternoon. And what about in the social domain? Overt stressors could be making new friends or being in constant communication with their friend could be a stressor for them. And how about the hidden stressors? Hidden stressors could be their ability to understand the tone of voice and sarcasm that is being used within the social setting in school, and being able to read the body language well. How about the pro-social domain? Overt stressors could include the need to obey rules versus what they want to do, being punctual for classes. And some hidden stresses could be having to say what is socially appropriate, waiting for others, as well as feeling helpless when others cry. So I hope I've shown you like the merit of different overt stresses and hidden stresses across all five domains that could be anticipated within a school setting in the current day context. We have come to the end of this episode on recognizing stresses. I hope this has been helpful and value adding to you. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. My contact details are there. See you in the next episode. Bye bye.